Thank you very much, Srividya. My distinguished colleagues, Ms. Aparna, Secretary, Department of Pharmaceuticals, and Dr. Vijay Raghavan, our distinguished Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, and distinguished colleagues on this conference, virtual conference. I first and foremost like to congratulate the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance for this event, very well thought out event. And there could not have been a better way to start such a big initiative in terms of its future implications in the immediate future than to have the Honorable Prime Minister to set the stage with his guidance, with his directions, and with his blessings. Secretary of Pharmaceuticals has highlighted in a significant detail the emerging contours of the draft policy related to the pharma and medtech sector. It's work in progress, and we're looking forward to a policy framework which is industry friendly, people friendly, as well as innovation and science friendly. I like to add to this one or two other policy strands which are currently in existence and are of relevant by way of information, at least in today's for today's audience. Firstly, we've been making conscious efforts in fostering innovation research and building and strengthening innovation ecosystem in other departments, such as the Department of Biotechnology and the Department of Science and Technology and the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Apart from the relatively independent, autonomous ecosystem of our academia, the Make in India and Startup India programs, amongst others, are also policy levers moving forward with the mission that we are discussing today. We also would like to highlight that the Department of Biotechnology has the National Biopharma Mission. It also has Mission COVID Suraksha, which came so handy and so it turned out to be such a great catalyst and a facilitator for the COVID vaccine and COVID science and technology journeys is still in existence, and there are opportunities out there. You may also be aware that there is a National Biotechnology Development Strategy 2021-25, which is also which would also be one of the catalysts for change as we move forward. The Science, Technology and Innovation Policy STIP 2020 also aims to achieve technological self-reliance and to position India among the top three scientific superpowers in the decade to come and chart out pathways to attract, nurture, strengthen, and retain critical human capital through people-centric science, technology, and innovation, and aims to double the number of full-time equivalent researchers every 5 years. And there is therefore a huge push for the potential science and technology expertise within the country. Uh, I would like to very much appreciate the effort of Department of Pharmaceuticals in the upcoming policy to catalyze research and development and innovation in the pharma medtech sector in India. Full support and absolutely a great opportunity for our nation to transform the R&D landscape of pharma and medtech research. I may also like to add here that at NITI Aayog, we are working on a research-linked incentive scheme, which would incentivize risk-taking for discovery and translation of new drugs, biologics, vaccines, and other moonshot areas. For moonshot areas where risk is very important, we would like to support by way of, we would like to propose to support by way of weighted tax deductions using the research, using the productivity linked incentive paradigm in this regard. So you would appreciate that we are going through to look at multiple pathways to support research and development, and of course, manufacturing by way of PLI scheme and mega parks and so on and so forth. All this should come handy, and also if there are other ideas related to this and beyond, this summit would be a great opportunity to churn them and to present to the nation and the government in this regard. I'd now like to highlight 4 points by way of practical considerations and imperatives for the consideration of the audience. Firstly, in order to move in this journey, it is very evident that we have to be willing to take risk. We have been too cozy as industry in not taking risk. As Dr. Vijay Raghavan said and Madam Aparna highlighted, our previous journey met the objectives of the times in a very big way and served the world and the nation. But going forward, the future could actually be bleak if we don't now make the right turn in the right direction by way of being discoverers of solutions and discoverers of drugs and medicines and biotechnologies. This would mean that the industry should be ready to take risk. And above all, this is a mindset issue. But here we are seeing strands of how the government can be helpful in partnering with the private sector and the industry to take the way forward. So the first message is we should go loud and clear from this summit. India's industry shall take risk, shall be ready to take risk. I am told by esteemed colleagues such as Dr. Vijay Raghavan that the failure rate is 90% in such journeys, particularly pharmaceuticals. And therefore, that level of failure has to be accepted as success, truly a success in a larger context. And that is the first very important imperative. The second imperative is that as we move in the direction of discovery, research, and early development pathways, we will have to be methodologically very rigorous. And I'm mentioning this particularly in the context of not only the laboratory and early clinical stage development, which is one area, but also beyond that, the clinical studies. And here I want to bring forth to you a sad fact that some of the drugs that were trialed during the COVID phase actually were so poorly, supported by sample size. They were sub-size trials. Whether they worked or not worked, it is not important. But some of the drugs that we had in the country undergoing trials was so poorly conducted. And I had a chance to look at the results and the methodologies that really it was really below par. It is not acceptable. We may like to see in the same span of time, there were high quality studies. I refer to the plasma study, for example, in COVID-19, done by India and multiple sites in multiple hospitals in the country. I'm also referring to other drugs where the sample sizes and they were multi-site studies, which added gravitas and the knowledge worth of the study. At the same time, we are proud of seeing vaccine trials of the highest order. The vaccine trials encompass 25,000 subjects, 28,000 subjects in the phase 3 and a few thousand in earlier phases. But some of the drug trials were as subsized as 150, less than 100, 200, and obviously there could be a hype, but there would not have been scientific acceptance. So I want us to be ready to take a tough path, which the vaccine industry, vaccine manufacturers have shown even in the toughest of the pandemic days, the research on vaccines went forth. And therefore, I do agree with the previous speakers that the COVID-19 vaccine story has lessons, and there are inspiring strands that we need to build on. We also had thought that perhaps we will find a drug against corona earlier than the vaccine. It happened other way around. And I think partly it is to the fact that the methodologies were invested in. And I hope that going forward, this summit and IPA will resolve how high quality efforts have to be made. If we make substandard efforts, they don't lead anywhere. It's a waste of time and a waste of energy eventually. Uh, my next point is to highlight the fact that even as we can work with classical molecules, the real future and the leapfrogging that this nation can achieve is in the areas of what at NITI we like to call moonshot ideas, moonshot priorities, the complex generics, the gene based therapies, the biosimilars, the regenerative medicine solutions, orphan drugs, and drugs that will offset the antimicrobial resistance. It's very close to my heart. Like to see breakthroughs in the field of AMR, which is a silent pandemic much larger than the COVID 19 pandemic, and it lasts much longer in times to come. And here we would also very much like to add the traditional and Ayurveda medicines. So I think prioritizing in these directions, apart from the priorities such as tuberculosis and classical, areas such as tuberculosis and malaria and so on, would be the way forward. We can leapfrog here because we can still catch up with the growth and the scientific trajectory that is prevailing in the world today. And indeed, our investment in this area, if we are not made today, we would be left behind, and we may be begging these solutions at a high cost when the needs of such a large nation may become urgent in, God forbid, in near future. My next point, the second last point, is that it's very critical, as you have heard from my distinguished colleague. Academia industry collaboration has to be there in this journey, and we have had a modest record in this regard. And in particular, a person like me who has come from a clinical medicine institution and background, I can say with reasonable honesty that, look, the interface with industry by credible clinical or medical sciences institutions, the mechanisms really do not exist. We are wary of these arrangements. We are wary of the conflicts of interest. We are wary of the non-transparent processes that might come up at some point in time. So, in order to pave way for strong academia and industry collaboration in the space of clinical trials, I'm not necessarily saying this in the field of early discovery stage where the paradigm may be different. We will have to build new new mechanism which are based on trust. For example, it is quite okay to have an IIT professor discovering a medicine to have a company, become a startup. But when you say this by a cardiologist who is helped discover and trial a medicine, then the conflict of interest is of a different kind, because you may be seen as promoting something which is not really necessarily seen to be transparent. So it's a new challenge as a part of that overall endeavor. The clinical interface with industry has been under a scanner, and we'll have to create pathways to strengthen this, because high quality studies should not be done in the 20 nursing homes with small sample sizes just listed here and there. They need to be done in institutions of credible scientific worth. And when we need these arrangements to be made there, the funding mechanisms have to be such that the conflicts don't arise and the industry actually does not interfere with the process of research and accepts the results, whether they are positive or negative. So I'm flagging this issue because I have been associated with this kind of a work from very close quarters. My last intervention of practical importance, I believe, is to be able to prepare high quality clinical trial researchers in the domain of Ayurveda and Ayush systems. What I mean by this is that clinical studies, epidemiological studies, biomedical studies have a method to them. There are scientific important considerations. The rules of the game are very evident. If you want to pass through a particular product to be accepted by everybody, to become a mainstream product with a high value publication in the best journals possible, best mainstream journals. Then the methodological rigor that we apply to say to other drugs, molnupiravir or whatever, has to be also applied to the molecules of interest of coming from other disciplines. But there, to me, the very important challenge is the capacity to conduct high quality studies and the capacity most designing these clinical studies, the randomized controlled trials, the blinding of the studies, ample sample sizes. Again, sample sizes become an issue in some of these studies when they come up as evidence. Um, um, measurement, measurement of outcomes, systematic blinded measurement of outcomes, high quality analysis, high quality avoidance of a plethora of biases which color the results of the studies. So I plead here to seek your guidance, and NITI would be very keen to create to capacity in the area of research, clinical trials in particular, among the experts from the Ayush background. And we can work together that when they conduct studies, the studies should be fully funded. Studies should be of the size, sample sizes that make the difference, that are decisive. And there is a rigor of the highest kind, highest level uh, for these studies, as also for every other R&D work that you would do as a way of the mission that we are unleashing today. Before I stop, Madam Aparna mentioned there are lessons from the COVID journey for vaccination development, and they can be summarized in very few bullet points. The journey was associated uh, with risk-taking behavior, decision to take risk. The government took risk supporting candidate vaccines and candidate manufacturers, and the industry took risk, clear risks for something which may or may not have succeeded. And we know that there is a list of unsuccessful vaccine candidates across the nation, across the world. Number two, investments were made. Investments have been made by the government and by the industry, more so by the industry. Regulatory pathways were eased and facilitated. It's the third element. But the fourth bullet is the most important from the vintage point where, you know, some of us had the opportunity to be in. Trust, dialogue, bonding, connect, shared journey, shared purpose, and and above all, the blessing of the highest in the nation. Clear cut guidance, direction, support from the government on a daily basis. Now you have that support. The Honorable Prime Minister has given a clarion call today, and these other elements are critical for us to make a difference. Apart from the right methods, right investments, right choice of the areas where we wish to work, and making the best of the present and the emerging, even more aspirational uh, regulatory and a policy environment that we hope will be there very, very soon, even more so from what we have seen till date. Looking forward to the formalization and institutionalization of the R&D and innovation pharma medtech sector policy very, very soon. And that I believe will be an inflection point and an opportunity to harness. Thank you, IPA, for the opportunity. Thank you very much. Discover in India. Thank you. Jai Hind.